Good evening. Let me call to order the regular City Council meeting for the City of St. Helena, Tuesday, February 27. Mr. Doring, would you lead us in the pledge?
Ready. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mayor Galbraith?
Here.
Vice Mayor White?
Here.
Councilmember Doring?
Here.
Ellsworth?
Here.
Coverstein?
Here.
All right, next item is public forum. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address us with respect to matters of municipal concern that are not on our agenda this evening. Public forum is limited to comment of 3 minutes. Mr. McKelly?
Good evening. My name is Anthony McKelly. I'm also president of Citizens for Responsible Winery Growth in St. Helena. And we, a while back, filed a lawsuit against the city on the Behringer approval. And one of the main reasons for that was that the mayor had presented this document on May 30th, 2017, that they had an allocation of 19 million gallons. And I have a copy of the document I gave Cindy. However, several months later, in fact about 6 months, I was told by the city attorney it was not a real number from any contract negotiation. In other words, it didn't exist. It was fake. And yesterday at the community forum at the Native Sons, the mayor answered that question: where'd this number come from? And how did it happen? And he says there, and everybody's welcome to look at it, I'll give you the website, that he was very busy, a lot of things happened, but as soon as he realized the error, which must have been when I appealed that to the city, he immediately came to the city council and notified them. And why wasn't I told for 6 months later, after spending lots of money on this lawsuit, that that was one of the reasons, because their EIR said they wouldn't use water, and all of a sudden they're getting 19 million gallons. And if anybody wants to see that response in yesterday's thing, it's under cpssthelena.com, the website. So my question to all you city council members: can you back up the mayor's statement that he acknowledged that he had given out incorrect and false information at a city council meeting, and immediately once he learned that, he corrected it at a city council meeting? I'd like you, if any of you know when he did this, and if there's any documentation to this. Also on that list of water agreements, Franciscan also doesn't have a water contract, but it says they get 10 or 11 million gallons. That doesn't exist also on that. So Behringer was not the only item on that. Thank you.
All right, let me respond briefly to that. It came out when Jennifer Toole was making a presentation. What had happened was that I had misread a city spreadsheet, not realizing that where it was entered, it was not a contract, but coming from another document. And, of course, I acknowledged the error the minute it was brought to me. With respect to Franciscan, I looked at the water agreements this morning. Again, with respect to the spreadsheet, the number that I was using for the purposes of my document actually referred to Hall, and the number is correct. I just had the wrong winery attached to the number. It made no difference in terms of the document itself. Those are the answers there.
Where was the mistake acknowledged?
I remember acknowledging it at a time when Jennifer Toole was making a presentation here.
To the council?
To the council, absolutely.
Because yesterday on it, and I just want to understand when you did that, and why you waited so long for me to spend a lot of money. That's all, because that lawsuit might not happen.
Well, I'm sorry. Again, I've responded as well as I can. Unfortunately, I wish I didn't make errors, but on that one I did. So there we are. Okay. Any further public comment?
Yeah. My name's Tom Belt, and I live at Hillview Place. I'm hoping tonight I can get an answer as well. As you know, I've been searching for information quite a while, and I've been trying to get what I would consider to be the real facts behind my question, and that relates to the Meadowood tanks. You all know that we are paying close to, or at least it's scheduled to be paying close to $500,000 to replace the Meadowood tanks. And about a year ago when I asked our mayor about this, and I think I even asked Erica about it about 6 months ago, it was explained to me that St. Helena's water system is a commingled water system where the water continues to circulate, and that basically it would be almost impossible to determine the costs involved when the water goes up and comes down and so forth and so on. Anyway, once I saw the water agreements, I decided to look up the Meadowood water agreement, and we actually talked about this last night too with the mayor. And basically, the mayor said he was very well versed in the agreement,
Right.
and I don't doubt that he is. But I'm just curious. There is a particular paragraph in this agreement that I need further explanation on it. And it basically states on paragraph 8, it says, Meadowood represents that the water system to be dedicated to the city is in good condition,
Right.
is constructed to the as-built plans, and as adequate to service the approved development. If any improvements are necessary to remedy any deficiencies or to provide services to the approved development, the city shall not be responsible for any costs related thereto. Now, to follow up on this, I sent a public records request in to the city, and I found out that the city has no public records to define what the water system really is. Although, according to this agreement, it was Exhibit B on this, although apparently the city doesn't have it. But I'm still perplexed. I understand we assume the water system,
Right.
but the contract clearly states that we aren't under any obligation to repair or maintain it. And I know that Meadowood built the tanks themselves. It's on Meadowood property. And I don't understand why the water customers in St. Helena are having to be held responsible for replacing or repairing them. That's my question.
All right, and I responded to that last night, and what I said, and I had checked with Ms. Smithies perhaps a week or 10 days ago, and please sit down.
Oh, yes.
And what I said was that language referred to whether or not the Meadowood system was in reasonable condition or needed improvement at the time it was taken into the city's system. It has nothing to do with the further maintenance and repair of that system once it's in the city's system. And I conferred with Ms. Smithy. She said that was pretty much standard engineering language, and that my interpretation or the way I read it was the correct way to read the contract. That's it. That's all. Is there any further public comment? Mr. Belt, please.
Is it?
Can I just?
Please sit down. Is it?
Correct, and we confer with the city attorney on that as well, Tom, perhaps.
Well,
Okay. Yeah.
let me just weigh in that the Brown Act only allows for limited response to questions from the public that are delivered during the public comment part of the meeting. It would be inappropriate for us, for me, either as staff or for Ms. Smithies or any of us, to engage in anything more than very, very brief responses at this point. So in addition, I would rather not respond with respect to my views of a contract that I don't have in front of me, and I'd like to meet confidentially with the council before I would weigh in on that. Anyway, that's all I have.
I'd just like to make a suggestion. This is a recorded document, and I would just merely suggest that we get a copy of the full document, because I think that Exhibit B is very important to determining this in the first place. If the tanks aren't even on Exhibit B, that's a whole different subject. So I'd like to request that we get a complete copy of the recorded document with the exhibits.
Sure. I join in that request. All right. Any further public comment? Seeing none, our next item is reports by staff and city council. Let me begin with the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Last week, the SHAPE Committee had 2 public workshops associated with their work. Those were pretty well attended. We had a little over 30 people at both workshops, so great turnout. And tomorrow night, they continue their meetings at 6:30 in this room. Thank you.
City Attorney, we met in closed session with no reportable action, right?
That's correct. The City Council met to discuss those items designated on the closed session agenda today over at City Hall. No reportable action was taken.
All right, Ms. Mitz?
I would just like to report that we are currently put out a draft for the long-range financial forecast to City Council members as well as SHAPE Committee members. We will be discussing the long-range financial forecast tomorrow at the SHAPE meeting and then at the March 13th City Council meeting.
City Clerk has nothing. Mr. Hausch?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council and the public. I just want to report briefly on last night's neighborhood meeting we held to discuss the Hunter residential subdivision. It was held at the firehouse. It was very well attended. We had about 60 people. Thank you very much to everyone who took the time to come out and provide their input and ask their questions. The neighborhood meeting was essentially intended to reintroduce the project. It had been a number of years since any activity had occurred, to allow the applicant to present the project to the public, and then also to allow the public to hear directly from city staff regarding what the process is going to be for the review of that project and the EIR. We will be holding the EIR scoping meeting on March 12th from 6 to 7:30, likely at the firehouse, although I can't confirm that location yet. We will put the information on the website and send out the notification next week. And the notification will also be the notice of preparation, which is the formal process to begin the EIR. So just keep everyone aware of that. So March 12th, 6 to 7:30 is the date.
All right. Ms. Smithies?
I wanted to report that the inoculations of the Elm Tree Tunnel was completed last week. In addition, all the 14 new trees that were going to be planned to be planted have been completed, and they'll be monitored and watered, the coming months. In addition, an integrated utility master plan RFP will be hitting the streets tomorrow. So hopefully we'll have the answer when the task on that item will be to include an assessment of our water distribution system and if tiered rates are appropriate. So that will be one of the tasks that the awarded consultant will be looking at. And we'll hopefully be bringing that back to council in April, early May, so we can hit the road on that master planning. It'll include stormwater, sewer, and water. In addition,
Can I just ask a quick question on that? Is that going to come back to the council before it goes out as an RFP, or is it going out now as the RFP?
it's going out now as an RFP, but
Okay.
if you have any questions, please
Okay.
talk to me. And then as far as council, at the last meeting, they've asked me about our current water supply. And right now we're at 57.6% capacity in our Bell Canyon Reservoir. Projections show zero rain will be short of the 85% by April 1st. So we're implementing a staff report for Phase 1 water restrictions for March 27th. But we're also in a hopeful rain cycle. So we will get that plan that for the staff report on March 27th. And if we get ample rain and projections show better than 85%, then we'll be okay going into April 1st. But I'll get back to you on that. But we are continuing to monitor. The state reached out to us a couple of weeks ago, and they've been working with our staff, determine projections, and they are wanting to set up some workshops with countywide municipalities to further water conservation measures, and so we're just continue monitoring closely because of lack of rainfall through now.
I have one other question relating to Bell Canyon, and that is I saw that the governor yesterday, perhaps, maybe today, yesterday, signed a new bill dealing with inspections of dams and around the state after the terrible difficulty on the Feather River Dam at Oroville. And the question I have, not for now, but at some point, can you take a look at the new legislation and advise us as to what it may mean to us in terms of what we have to do and what the cost may be?
Certainly.
Okay. Thank you. Councilor?
Yeah, go. So two things. On May 17th, there's going to be a Napa County Water Symposium, and I'm going to be working on that along with some representatives from Napa Valley College, and the Susquehanna Intertribal Council. And that'll be at Napa Valley College. I'll have more information on that. and we're going to look at regional, local, and statewide water issues and how we sort of tie in on all those. And then the other thing is I wanted to bring up is that at some point I'd like to see agendized a discussion on our intake policy on projects coming in, and so I hope at some point one of the other council members will support getting an agendized discussion on that. So that's all I've got.
My understanding of the rules is that any council member can ask for a matter to be placed on the council agenda.
I thought we had a new policy.
Am I wrong about that?
We're in the process of updating the protocols, and we have a practice of requesting a second on each requested item so that we don't dilute our focus on the goals and objectives that you've asked us to work on. And with respect to this one, in terms of intake, I would need a little more clarification of, is it planning projects, is it something else?
Yeah, okay, I'll write up a little something, and then we'll have that to look at. Thanks.
Okay, good. Mr. Doring?
I don't have anything in my mind other than what I had a thought that was triggered by the discussion on the water conservation measures. I would just make this comment. This community needs a lot of lead-in time, and I think even if we don't have to go into potential conservation or restrictions, I think we need to spend a fair amount of time letting our constituents know that that could be a possibility in whatever format. We can do it by email or newsletters and all those different things, sort of the state of our situation so that folks, in April and May are not sort of caught off guard. You announced it here, but a lot of people don't get their information from watching our city council meeting. So that's just my thought for that.
Mr. White?
Nothing, but it looks like the chief does.
Yeah, okay. Chief and Bowden?
Give me your 3 minutes.
Two.
Sit down.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I just wanted to let everybody know that regarding the truck ordinance that was passed in, I believe, November, while we are capable of enforcing it now, before we do a directed enforcement campaign, we have a couple extra steps that we want to take, putting signs out on Main Street as you enter town north and south, notifying the truckers. We have some letters to send out to the businesses that use the large trucks to bring their goods in and out that we are mailing out to them to let them know. We have posted on the Department of Transportation's website that we have an ordinance that prevents them from coming off of the main roadway and using a direct route only. So until those things are in place, I didn't want to have a campaign where we're out there in mass. We are enforcing it as we see it, but not to the scale that we will once the signs are up. We've ordered the signs. We're waiting on them to come in. So, or actually, I think we're waiting on them to be ordered. The design was approved. So, as soon as they get up, we'll be out there in force for that.
All right.
Thank you.
Department of Transportation's website.
Vice Mayor, do you have anything?
Well, I guess I'm going to miss our first meeting in March. I'm going to be attending the Metropolitan Transportation Commission workshop in Washington, D.C. as a representative for the NVTA. So I'll have something to report after that.
All right. My only comment here is that our election official, John Tudor, is seeking applicants to man the voting centers under the new statute. It requires some significant training, but I would certainly ask folks in the community to go to his website and see if they're interested, because it's going to take a lot of effort to come up with the 40 to 60 people he needs to man the voting centers around the county around the election. I think they start either 10 days or 4 days before the election, depending upon site, but it's a big effort there, and our residents should certainly, hopefully, if they can volunteer. I think it's a paid position, too, so it would be great if some of our people could do it. So I think that takes us to presentations and public recognitions, and we're honored to have today representatives from the Napa County Flood and Water Conservation District with a presentation for us. Mr. Thomaser?
Good evening, Mayor Galbraith and members of council. Rick Thomas, I'm the Watershed Operations Manager, or Watershed and Flood Control Operations Manager with the Napa County Flood Control and Water Conservation District. Thank you for having us here tonight. We had a public outreach meeting at the Valley View Mobile Home Park on Pope Street about 2 or 3 weeks ago, maybe a month ago, which was really well attended, and we explained some of our programs to members of the public, and we're here today to give you a condensed version of that for the benefit of council. Let's go to the next slide here. Just briefly, I'll explain to you what we're going to, let's see if we get the clicker to work, what we're going to talk to you about. So our programs are mostly funded through what's called the Watershed Management Program. It's an assessment, a direct parcel assessment that all parcels within Napa County, all property owners within Napa County pay into. And it's a small assessment generally. Most residential parcels, like in the city of St. Helena, would pay approximately $21 or $22 a year for the services that are provided for the flood district. In the larger vineyard properties pay a bit more, but our assessment's sort of capped, and I think our largest assessments top out at maybe $350 a year for very large vineyard parcels with wineries and commercial uses. And so now we have nothing, but we're going. Well, what we're going to do today is we'll go through the list of programs that we have and the benefits that we can provide for the city of St. Helena and also the residents of St. Helena. And I want to introduce Shaun Horne, who is our Watershed Resources Specialist, and Shaun's going to take it from here and go through the program. Oh, briefly though, our total revenues that we derive from the Watershed Management Program, it's about this year will probably be about $1.2 million, so to give you a sense of the scale and the scope, and that provides services countywide for all the county unincorporated area and the 4 cities of the county. The only city that doesn't participate is American Canyon. We're actually working to hopefully change that. They voted not to participate in our program 20 years ago when our assessment was created. So currently we don't provide services down there, but we're trying. So.
Yeah. Good evening, council members. My name is Shaun Horne. I'm a Watershed and Flood Control Resource Specialist with Napa County Flood Control. We're going to give you a brief presentation of these programs right here and spend a little bit of time on our stream maintenance program specifically. The stream maintenance program is countywide, primarily in the Napa River watershed and the urbanized reaches. So we conduct maintenance, and the activities that we do are vegetation management, down tree management, stream bank stabilization, sediment removal, riparian and stream enhancement projects, barrier removal projects, and then also trash and debris cleanup. So a couple real brief photos before and after on the right-hand side of that slide, just showing kind of the activities that we conduct. And in order to do these types of maintenance actions within waterways, we have a number of program permits, and we have a guiding document, our stream maintenance manual that we developed in 2012, that basically outlines the types of activities that we conduct and the best management practices that we apply. And then we went through the CEQA process to evaluate the impacts of those projects and then the mitigation elements. And then we developed applications and got permits from Fish and Wildlife and the Regional Water Quality Control Board and the State Water Board. And we do annual notifications to those agencies with all of our projects, and then also annual reports to those agencies showing what we've conducted in the Napa River watershed. It's important for us when we meet with the community members regarding street maintenance to define what maintenance is. Maintenance has kind of moved away from reach-wide clearing of vegetation and debris and towards targeted maintenance. So we try to minimize maintain the hydrological capacity of the streams by removing targeted flow blockages and improving physical and ecological processes. So that's kind of what we think of as our kind of maintenance priorities. We have very specific goals in our maintenance program. That is to improve the flood conveyance capacity of our channels, minimize flow obstructions, maintain stable stream banks, and then also improve ecological conditions and physical processes within our streams. There's a number of kind of maintenance considerations that we look at when we go out and evaluate these sites with property owners. One thing to be aware of is that most of the streams within Napa County are located on private property. So these are, issues that we need to get agreements in place with private property owners in order to address most of the time. We do have different types of channels throughout the county, but primarily we're working on private property when we're thinking about the urbanized reaches. So one of the things we do every year throughout the county, and specifically within the cities and the urban reaches of the streams, is we do stream surveys. So starting in May, we'll do it again this year. We actually go out and physically walk the channels. Prior to doing this, we send postcards to all stream-sized residents to let them know that we'll be in the streams looking for these kind of flow-related hazards. And then we document these hazards in a database that we track to identify issues that we pointed out in that first slide, which are vegetation, down trees, and those kind of hazards. So there's just kind of two examples of debris jams on the Napa River on the left there, and then a large down tree that was on Sulphur Creek this summer that was identified. So we've kind of, as I was saying, adapted management to try to make the most environmentally sensitive flood control flood control maintenance program that we can have. This is an example before and after. On the left-hand side is the large oak tree that crossed Sulphur Creek this last winter. And in the summer, we went out with a tree crew and removed sections of that. So we kind of define that as a tree modification project. We left a lot of that large wood in the stream to improve physical processes and the complexity of the channel, but also because there was restraints as far as access with equipment into that site. So that's kind of what we experience a lot when we're doing these projects, is that access is extremely limited in the urbanized areas, and you can't always bring in the size of equipment that would be necessary to remove the entire tree itself. Also, in this case, we left a large portion of the root wad along the bank to help preserve the integrity of that bank, because if we were to remove that, there would be basically exposed soils and no vegetation left in the bank. So that was kind of the rationale for the approach that we took on that project. That was relocated in the city's park on Sulphur Creek. So one of the things we've been working with the city on for the last 3 years is vegetation management within the City of St. Helena Flood Control Project. We've been doing about a week of work with crews in there to manage non-native invasive plants that are coming in, and that's to improve the revegetation efforts to try to comply with project revegetation objectives, but also to ensure that the capacity of those features are maintained. One of the things that's a significant issue throughout the Napa River watershed is arundo. If any of you have driven on the Silverado Trail near Pratt Lane, you've noticed a bamboo-like plant, which is actually a giant grass called arundo. The Flood Control District has been working for about the last decade on removing arundo throughout the watershed, and we have very targeted reaches that we're working on. And so the last 3 years, we've been working downstream of Pope Street. So all the yellow dots on the slide are actual arundo patches that have been removed by the Flood District over the last 3 years in coordination with private property owners. And then associated with those removal projects, we do native revegetation efforts. Upstream of Pope Street, there's a number of blue dots. Those are all arundo patches that have been mapped. We haven't actually begun working with landowners on the removal of those quite yet, but that's our next project reach. So we intend to start working in that reach this following summer, and we'll be outreaching to those landowners in the next couple of months. One of the other maintenance activities that the Flood District does with funding from landowners within these specific restoration reaches is associated with the Napa River, Rutherford, and Oakville restoration projects. You've probably heard these projects have been going on since about 2006, 2007. The Rutherford Reach was completed in 2015, but the Flood District has been taking on maintenance and working with landowners to ensure that the restoration features function as intended and the revegetation is successful. So all of these just different polygons along this map, along this 4.5 mile section from Zinfandel Lane down to Oakville Crossroad, are restoration projects that were implemented by the county and then are being maintained by the Flood Control District. And then moving downstream, this is from Oakville Crossroad on the left all the way down to Oak Knoll Avenue, is the Oakville Restoration Reach. The most recent phase was done at Yountville Crossroad. So if you cross Yountville Ville Crossroad and look south along the river, you'll see a number of large restoration efforts that have been going on and are still underway and will be completed this following fall. This project's about 50% complete, and we've got about 3 more years of implementation on it. So one program that the Flood District administers is the Stream Bank Stabilization Cost Share Program. This is available to all property owners along waterways, and this was designed to help landowners deal with erosion issues that arrive along waterways. And so it was developed to provide financial incentives and financial assistance to property owners who have these issues because they can be very costly to deal with. It's primarily for landowners who have infrastructure along the top of bank, and we try to work with landowners to develop biotechnical solutions for these. It is a landowner-driven process, so any landowner that participates is developing the design and getting the project permits themselves, and then actually implementing the project with a construction contractor and being reimbursed for a portion of the cost of that project. This was developed in order to provide some assistance to landowners, but not take on the liability of constructing projects like this on private property. I think the last 2 that we did in St. Helena was 2014, and there was 2 property owners along Sulphur Creek that did a combined project. And I think ultimately we've spent about $60,000 on that effort with them. So one of the resources that we have available to the community is the Napa Valley Regional Rainfall and Stream Monitoring System. This is an online website available for everyone to understand in real time what kind of stream flows we're having in the valley, and then also what the rain gauges on the peaks and throughout the valley are showing. So at any time during a storm event, you can see in real time what kind of flows we're getting in the river and what we're predicting. So there's also storm forecasting in this website, and also the ability to look back into the historical conditions. So this is a really valuable tool, and the website is napa.onerain.com, and it's something that we hope the whole community really knows is available to them if they are interested in following this kind of information. One of the things that the city and the flood district collaborate with all of the other entities in the county is the stormwater program. So the flood district funds the administration of this program in part. We fund about 50% of a staff person to administer the countywide program, and the cities that are collaborating on this fund the other 50%. The city is responsible for the stormwater implementation and compliance within the jurisdiction of the city, but the flood district helps with overseeing the actual reporting and ensuring that we're working together through a JPA on that effort. So those are really the programs that we were hoping to highlight for you all tonight. And I think the underlying message is if you have community members that have concerns with streams, the flood district's always available to assist them and to come out and talk to them about whatever they're seeing, what the issues they might have on their private property. The primary streams that we work on in St. Helena are Sulphur Creek and York Creek.
Right.
Oh, last one, sorry. Forgot about the WIC. The one other program that we do fund is the WIC page. We, the flood district, provide some funding support in order to keep this operational. If you haven't heard of the WIC is kind of your one-stop online source for watershed information. Provides a lot of good details about projects that are happening throughout the Napa River watershed, and also some educational materials. We develop content for it, and then also contribute a little bit of funding to help operate that site. So that's all we have tonight. We'll take any questions if you have any. Otherwise, thank you very much.
Any questions for Mr. Horne or Mr. Thomaser? One question for the city clerk. Is it possible to put a reference to Napa.onerain.com somewhere on our city website so that folks can go to it? Because I think that information is often of very contemporary interest to our residents, and it might be helpful to have it on the website. Now, with respect to the WIC, Mr. Ellsworth is our representative.
Yes. And I went to a meeting the same day as the presentation at Vineyard Valley, and there's ongoing efforts in terms of monitoring flow coming out of the river, going into irrigation, and also groundwater. So there's a consultant out of Woodland, and I'm going to check in with her, and I should have brought her card tonight because I should have correlated it to this. But the county is being pretty proactive at looking at our resources, our watershed resources.
It's Ludorf and Skalman.
That's right, yes.
Vicky Kreisinger.
Yeah, very knowledgeable.
Right.
And I wanted to make one comment that I thought was great that I learned at the Vineyard Valley meeting, was the concept that, sometimes people look into a river or creek and they see a tree that's left there. And we think, oh, that's going to obstruct the flow, but finding out that it's left there on purpose to keep the bank integrity because of the root structure. So that was good for me to learn and then to pass on to other people when they call and say, and have them understand that it's often a choice to help keep the integrity of the bank. So that was good to know.
All right. Maybe I should add that under the JPA, Joint Powers Agreement, by virtue of being mayor, I actually sit on the board of the Flood Control and Conservation District, and so if residents wish to contact the agency through me, that's always fine to do. All right.
I did want to add one other point that I forgot to mention. So you all have the Napa River near St. Helena gauge, and if you go to the One Rain site and you look under the link called Napa River Flood Forecasting, it'll take you to the California Nevada River Forecast Center, and it'll open up. The link will initially open to the Napa River near Napa gauge, and there's a link to just say go to the next forecast station upstream, basically, and you'll get to the St. Helena station. But that's what we look at. That's basically the best source of information for is the river going to flood or not. It'll forecast, based on rainfall that's expected. And one thing I wanted to add that we've worked, it was quite a long process, but we finally got the gauge calibrated, and we discovered what was wrong. There was a survey issue with USGS, who originally installed the gauge. They were using an older survey datum, and so that was corrected. And so now you'll notice the flood stage for St. Helena is listed at, I believe it's 16. It was 16, now it's 18. So it's calibrated more to, it's more correct. And also with your recent flood improvements, most city residents don't really have to worry about flooding. You're mostly protected, but I did want to call that to your attention.
Okay, good.
So,
thank you very much. Okay.
Is there public comment?
Sure.
My name is Bobbie Monnette, and I'm speaking as a citizen. I would like to know a little bit more about the Napa County-wide Stormwater Pollution Prevention Program, and if part of that, I've heard some concern about some of the buildup south of town having septic systems and the possibility of that leaching into the river. Does this pollution prevention program test the river for that sort of thing, or is that something altogether different? Or, maybe you could just say some more about that.
By all means.
So the Napa River, there is testing that goes on with the Napa River. It's actually done by the State Water Resources Control Board. The Napa River did have a listing for toxics such as leakage from septic systems. The river itself has been found to be mostly in good shape. Some of the tributaries had some higher levels, but the program itself that we administer doesn't do testing of the river. It's or our stormwater program, but the State Water Board does. So at some point I could give you my card and we could maybe chat offline about it.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further public comment? All right. Thanks very much for coming up. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, that takes us to the consent calendar. Staff has pulled, meaning completely pulled. We won't hear 8.4. So let me run through the consent calendar. I might say that I'd like the council to focus on whether, given the fact that we now publish our agenda 10 days in advance, it's really necessary to read off all these headings, or whether we can go to a system like is done by other agencies where we just move the consent calendar. But at least this time I'm going to read through, and perhaps next time we'll try and see whether everybody's agreeable to just moving the consent calendar with respect to items that have not been removed, to move things along. All right? All right? I certainly am. Any event, 8.1, consideration of proposed approval of special joint city council and planning commission meeting minutes of February 13, 2018, and regular meeting minutes of February 13, 2018. 8.2, consideration proposed approval resolution approving the Rianda House 2018 Rally for Rianda event and Rianda's House's 10th anniversary on Sunday, May 20th, 2018 at Lyman Park. 8.3, consideration proposed approval resolution appointing Amy Caraba Salazar, St. Helena Chamber CEO, to the Napa Valley Tourism Corporation and St. Helena Tourism Improvement District.
I'd like to pull that one, please.
Okay. 8.5, consideration approval of a resolution authorizing award purchase order in the amount of $65,709 to Folsom Lake Ford for the purchase of two 2018 Ford Interceptor all-wheel drive SUVs, and two, a budget increase of $106,400 to Citizens Option for Public Safety Fund number 224-49002630 for the purchase and outfitting of the two vehicles. 8.6, consideration of proposed approval resolution authorizing purchase of a new Chief's Command vehicle for the fire department, the amount of $55,749 from Enterprise Fleet Management. 2, authorizing a service contract for the vehicle for 48 months at a cost of $51.70 per month, and authorizing a budget increase of $56,010 in FY 2017-18 to account 5934800-2630 for the purchase of the vehicle and maintenance costs for the remainder of fiscal year 2017-2018. 8.7, consideration of proposed approval resolution reducing general fund expenses to impact fee funds by approving a budget decrease of $39,078 to $101,4500-2130, to a budget increase of $39,078 to number 713,4500-2130, and 3, a budget increase of $2,724 to $216,506-2145. At this point, the Chair would entertain a motion to approve consent items 8.1, 8.2, 8.5, 8.6, and 8.7.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Vice Mayor White?
Yes.
Councilmember Ellsworth?
Yes.
Cooperstein?
Yes.
Doring?
Sorry. Yes.
Mayor Galbraith?
Yes.
You were looking at me. I thought you were expecting me to say something.
Okay, that gets us back to 8.3, and perhaps Mr. Ellsworth can explain his issue here.
Yeah, I was actually hoping Amy Caraba Salazar would be here. I had an excellent meeting with her recently, and I was just going to ask that if, in moving this forward, if she could come back at some point and sort of give us a little education on what this is and how it kind of relates to St. Helena, just so that we're all up to speed as things go. So that was my only hope, is to see if we could have her come back and do a brief presentation at some point in the near future.
All right. Well, certainly we can extend an invitation to her and put her on the agenda for a briefing. That seems to me to make a lot of sense. But I assume then you have no issue with moving the item at this point.
No, I'm all for it.
I just had a point of clarification because I was confused by the report. I did go back and forth with Cindy. I thought she was replacing Vice Mayor White, who is our council designee to this board.
She is not. Normally, up until Pam Simpson went off of the chamber, there was always a representative from the executive board. So, no, she's not replacing either myself or April on that on that board. We'll still be representing the council.
Yeah. I would hope when she comes, she can give us a report on the contract performance, the chamber contract, in April, maybe, when everybody else reports.
So I move to approve 8.3.
Second.
Vice Mayor White?
Yes.
Councilmember Ellsworth?
Yes.
Cooperstein?
Yes.
Doring?
Yes.
Mayor Galbraith?
Yes. Okay. Next item is 10.1, which is an appeal. of administrative decision denying the following. One, dismissal of parking citation P31099 resulting in a refund of $55, refund of $45 late fine for late parking of parking citation P31099, and 3, refund of $21 return check. And let's see here. Ms. Mitz.
I am also going to ask for the support and help of our police chief as well, if necessary. So on June 27th of 2017, parking citation P31099, I will just refer to it as parking citation from here on out, was issued for a parking in a no parking zone on Church Avenue in St. Helena. The fine for this type of parking ticket is $55. It is due within 10 calendar days, and if the fine is not paid within 21 days, the fine does increase by additional $45. On September 15th, the parking citation was paid via check in the amount of $55. The date of the payment was actually 80 days after the notice of parking violation was issued. On September 21st, 2017, we did receive notification that check was returned for insufficient funds, so that triggered yet another fee of $21 for the insufficient check. On October 31st, Michael Taravella did request via email to the city clerk and that the city of St. Helena dismiss parking citation, in which his mother is the one who actually received the parking citation. So he was requesting this on her behalf. Received and dismiss any additional fees accumulated with the association of the citation, which is $121 total. There was a little bit of confusion between city clerk's office, my office, and then also the police department as to what the appeal actually was. So at that point, the police chief did respond to Mr. Taravella, stating that he was denying the appeal for the parking citation. And then Michael Taravella did ask for an appeal to the city council for the 3 items that are listed. The fiscal impact, if you do grant the appeal, it will be a refund of $121. The recommended action is the city council has 2 options in front of them. The first is to approve the resolution granting the appeal and the refund of $121. Or the second is to approve a resolution denying the appeal based on the following reasons. The first is that the dismissal of the parking citation. The citation was issued for parking on a street clearly marked with unobstructive no parking signs, as are provided in attachments. The refund of $45 late fine. The registered owner was contacted in writing in July 2017 to notify her that the payment was due, and then contacted over the phone in August of 2017, and then the fine was not paid until September 2017. And the third reason for denying the appeal would be the refunding of the $21 return check fee, which per Resolution 99-23, it does state that $21 would be established as a charge for return checks to cover the fees that we incur on from our financial institution as well as staff time. So at this time, staff is asking for City Council to make a determination to either appeal or uphold the decision.
Is the appellant here in the... No, so let me open... I don't see the appellant. Let me open the public hearing. Does anybody else wish to comment on this at public hearing? I'll close the public hearing. Is there any discussion? It needs to be at least some discussion by council, I suppose.
Was there a reason given for originally not being in on time? Was it ever?
The registered owner of the vehicle has never been in contact with us. The only thing we've had is an email from her son, and then a follow-up phone call, a follow-up email, and then a follow-up phone call. No, and he wasn't with the vehicle or in the vehicle at the time of the parking, so I have no idea why it wasn't paid on time and why it was parked where it was parked.
All right. Any further questions of the police chief? Thank you. Maybe I should lead off. I would deny the appeal. It seems like we have our rules and people should follow them. Anybody else have any comment?
I was just going to say I'm overwhelmed by your analysis. But I happen to agree. Thank you.
I kept it short. All right.
So I'll make it even shorter. I move to deny the appeal.
I just want to make one comment.
Sure.
I think if we had more information to support a reason to accept the appeal, I'd be inclined to think about it accepting it. But I think without the information, I would agree to deny the appeal.
All right. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second it. I wanted to say something as well.
Okay, go ahead, please.
I think we've certainly spent more than the money we're collected to bring this to the city council level. And there ought to be maybe another way to do it. It just astounds me that we're here talking about $121, and I can't imagine how much staff time went into this.
I couldn't agree more, but here we are. We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please. The motion is to deny the appeal.
Vice Mayor White?
Yes.
Councilmember Coperstein?
Yes.
Ellsworth?
Yes.
Doreen?
Yes.
Mayor Galbraith?
Yes.
And if there's a second council member that's interested in having the staff revisit our current process and bring you alternatives down the road, I'll happily incorporate that into my notes.
Yes. I had thought that, but maybe I'm wrong about this, that this to me is kind of like a code enforcement appeal, and I'm hoping there's some way to divert this type of appeal from the city council, and we've talked about that in the past. In any event, I look forward to some creative thinking on this. Okay. Next item is a discussion item. It's entitled City Attorney Policy Discussion and Direction.
So at your prior council meeting on February 13th, there was a request to agendize in the future a discussion on policies related to city attorney billing practices, et cetera. So we've placed this on the agenda tonight for discussion.
Mr. Dorn?
Are you looking for me to expound on what I mean? I guess I can just briefly. So, one of the clear obligations that we have is, we have oversight over our city attorney. We obviously have oversight of our city manager. Those are the two fundamental obligations that we have as city council members. With respect to city attorney services, I am concerned that we have not put ourselves in a position to exercise good, strong oversight over the management of our legal services. And it's not so much the billing, although that's part of it. It really is a much broader perspective on how we manage our city attorney's office and how we, first of all, how we retain a city attorney, what the city attorney's duties and responsibilities are, how projects are decided upon to go forward from either a city council member or a city council or from staff members. The format and content of billing. There are all kinds of things that, litigation policies, budgeting of projects, really. And I think the more we have that formalized, the easier it is for us to sort of exercise oversight and to a certain degree control that process. I've come to believe that budgeting is not enough, that we have an obligation to really communicate well with our staff and with ourselves about what our expectations are with our city attorney and the firm and special counsel. And so what I am proposing is that two council members maybe and the city manager form a working group, look at other policies, develop some policies that we can have here in St. Helena. And I think that I think I would feel more comfortable because, as I said, I think we're flying blind to a certain degree because we really don't have a formal set of policies in place.
All right. Any further discussion? I gather you would volunteer for that?
I would.
All right. I would volunteer as well. I obviously have a lot of experience in this area.
I think that idea is consistent with what we're doing with so many other areas, is creating policies, and so I think it's a good idea.
Is there any further public comment on this? It's obviously a matter to me, it would be interesting to see what policies and procedures other cities have in place and go from there. So, all right. That then takes us to 10.3, which is City of St. Helena Public Records Request Process and Procedure, Discussion and Direction. And let me begin by asking the city clerk to explain once again the PRA software that she has and what it does and what its capabilities are.
So we are in the development phase. We're actually in the end. We are going to have a portal on our website where requesters, it can be anybody in the community or outside agencies or from anywhere, can submit requests, and they'll go directly to our office. We can also deliver the information to the requester via the website. It'll be public information for everyone to see and to share, and I think it's going to be a helpful tool, not only for us, but for the community, just to see some additional information that other people are interested in seeing. So it'll be a helpful tool.
And is this tool a tool that's used by other cities at this point in time?
Actually, there are many different software companies. There's lots of different tools, and there are other agencies currently using PRA tracking tools.
But is the one that we've selected one that is being used by other California cities? Yeah.
And actually out of other states as well. But with California, our regulations are a little bit different from other states, and so I'm tweaking the program a little bit more just to be in line with California regulations.
So I think the issue is, from my memory, is whether we should or should not put the requestor's name into the program. But what I'm understanding from you is that typically the requestor's name is put in the program?
It is. It, of course, is at your discretion, and the requester's name can be left off if you prefer. It is public information if someone were to come to the counter and ask to see who is, requesting public information. I keep a spreadsheet. We keep a log that lists everyone, and the idea of having the public portal is just ease of access for all community members, council members, to see, what kind of information is being requested, and frankly, some of the information is interesting.
All right.
Is the discretion up to the person asking for the information, whether their name is posted with it?
It would be helpful for the council to provide direction to the staff so that we don't deal with it on a case-by-case basis, but understand your expectations for how we treat that data.
Right.
I'd prefer, I think it's great that you have the software. I think this is a nice advance. I think it's helpful that other people will be able to see the results. I'm opposed to posting the names or disclosing who is requesting this information. We've sat here and talked about water shaming people. I mean, I think of this as public records request shaming, and I just don't think it's appropriate. People are entitled to ask for records, and we have an obligation to provide them.
Well, let me open, is there any further initial comment? Let me open the public hearing. Does anybody wish to speak at public hearing on this?
Hi, my name is Bobbie Monnette. I was told by someone who I respect that doing so is in violation of the Constitution of the State of California. I had the section and number referral at home. I don't have it with me, and so I'm wondering if the city would if you guys would be interested in someone looking into that and making sure that that's not the case, and I can get that section to anyone who's interested if you let me know. So,
Okay. Any further public comment? Yes, Mr. Bell?
As someone who's asked my share of public records, I would support putting this on the website for everyone else to be able to look at and view, because main thing is it would save Cindy and the staff time. If someone duplicates a request, they can just refer them to the information that's already been provided. But I would object to having our names put on it, only because while I don't really care myself, I know there are quite a few people who would be reluctant to submit a public records request if they knew their name or perhaps their address or whatever would be provided in addition to the request information. So I would ask the City Council not to include that information. And I'm hesitant. I really am hesitant to say this, but when we had our February 6th town meeting, I'm going to go ahead and say it. I may regret it, but the mayor said, providing replies to Public Records Act requests is a demoralizing and impossible burden. I have argued for, and hopefully it will happen, that all Public Record Act requests as they come in will go up on the city's website so that residents can see who it is that is imposing these types of burdens on city staff, causing significant city expense. That's a quote. If we're going to be putting the information on, if this council decides to put the information on people's names, it should be for the reason because it's a Public Records Act, not because they're trying to intimidate people from submitting public records. So that's all I'll say.
All right. Mr. McKelly?
Good evening again. I'm Anthony McKelly. I want to take a little spin on this. I requested 2 public records requests. One was reinvestigating Behringer if they could store Los Cabos construction material, all their supplies, even UPS was going there, submitted that, find out they couldn't, submitted to NOAA, and if the letter hasn't already gone out, they're in violation, and NOAA has sent them a letter. And just so you all know, Los Cabos is now for sale. It's $70 million, in case none of you know that. And I know some of you up there voted for that albatross we have, and I just hope the present council doesn't do this again to the next hotel that comes to town. Second instance is on the water tanks on the Meadowwood property. I contacted the city and Cambria, the lady who does it with Cindy, sent me this on that, and I asked, when were the tanks built? The Meadowwood tank was built in 1963. Who built the tanks? The Meadowwood water tanks were built by the Meadowwood Resort. Who paid for the project? The Meadowwood water tanks were paid for by the Meadowwood Resort. Are the tanks on private or public property? They're on county property. Actually, they're on Meadowwood property. And once the water is stored, what happens? And here it says that any water stored is redistributed to the city system from both tanks. That's inferring the Holmes tank. I did not personally talk to the ex-person who for years ran our water department, but Tom Belt did, if he can come back and reclarify that. He says no water that goes to those tanks ever gets back to the city system. That water sits there and then it's repurged. And so we're looking where people are violating things. And now you're going to, because I whistleblowed, I guess, on Los Cabos, you're going to criminalize me in this thing. So I don't know how you're going to differentiate between somebody who's trying to help the city, because violations are going on that unfortunately city staff doesn't have time, or we don't have an enforcement officer, which we've been trying to get here, to go after all these violating people, because it's all over the city. With either the police department last week did a sting on contractors here that have no contractor's license, and all the landscapers that don't have no business licenses here. I mean, there's everything going on that's wrong in this city, and we're just trying to help the city out. We're not trying to victimize you, but my only concern after the Behringer document I got from the mayor, that all these documents we get, are they real? Because I really have a skepticism now of believing what is real now in the city. Thank you.
All right. Any further public comment?
I just want to say I agree with what Tom said. It sounds like a benign thing to put the name up there, but depending on who the people are that are in the city hall and meetings that we have, somebody could get mad one night and say, Tom Belt asked for this for 15 times. I don't think that a person's name should be your prominent concern. What your concern should be: are we providing this service, and are people using it? And that's a way for you to build confidence of the citizens here so that we can get this information. I think it doesn't have to turn into something that disqualifies people and tries to get them not to come down and ask for another request. Our country is based on giving out information. And the reason why that act was probably passed because people were not happy with the way things were going, and they want the information. And so the bill was passed, and here we are. And I don't think it's a good idea to have the incentive to see who's asking for this and who's asking for that and how many times has he been here. It shouldn't matter. Thank you.
All right. Please.
Thank you for that privilege. We've been looking into this for quite some time, and I mentioned it earlier today, this afternoon. I contacted a past retired public works employee, and I walk up to Beaver Road every day, practically, and I stopped and asked one of the current public works people who is up there and for the Holmes tank. And I said, can you tell me, is the water that comes up to this tank, does it get redistributed to the customers in St. Helena? And he said no. He says it services just a small number of people up there on the Beaver Road, and apparently there's a pump that provides extra pressure for some people. So I also asked him about the Meadowood tanks, and we were told that it doesn't redistribute either, which is again part of the reason why I came up here earlier, because these things all relate to Catherine Hansford's definition of subsidizing rates. And if the cost of service can be shown by a city through its records that it costs more to deliver a particular group of people water than it does the rest of the people, then those costs should be directed towards those particular those people. So I know in the past rate study it was decided that we wanted to just make everything equitable and spread things out, but it would appear to me that there might have been an oversight in these particular decisions that were reviewed by both of the ad hoc committees based on the evidence and the information that we are receiving. So I don't know. I just like to make that comment.
All right. Any further public comment? Let me close public comment. Let me say just a couple of words. First of all, I certainly agree that the purpose of publishing the names, if we go down that road, is not for purposes of harassing anybody. It's public information. I think if we don't publish the names, I think we have perhaps some obligation to say that the names could be made available upon a Public Records Act request. It is public information. In some ways...
Why is that an obligation?
Well, in some ways, to my way of thinking, once you make a Public Records Act request, you've put yourself into you've put yourself into the process of making a public record of yourself at that point. You shouldn't be worried about having it published. But I hear what's being said, and so I'm not opposed to not publishing the names at this point. I'd like to see how it goes. But I also think some way or another, people who make a Public Information Act request should know that their names could be subject to a public information request, that they can take that into account when they file their public information request. It seems to me like that's full disclosure.
I see no public benefit whatsoever from publishing these names or even now announcing to people that if you really want to know who's doing this, you can come in and make a public records request for it. We're trying to establish a city hall that is more welcoming to our residents and more service-oriented, and to me, this just strikes me as going totally in the wrong direction. So I hope there's consensus here that we don't publish these names, and we don't need to revisit this.
Any further comment?
Well, I don't see any problem with leaving it off of the website, but I don't know how you can say that if somebody makes a request, it is going to be a public document that should be able to be accessed by anybody else in the public.
Yeah, it's available if somebody comes and asks.
Okay, I think that's just what the.
I think that's what's being said.
I think that's just what the mayor said, and
Yeah,
I'm
but-
in
but
favor.
I don't think we need to post it on there. Like, go look here for the name. You know, I don't think we need to post that.
No, and I didn't suggest that either.
I don't. So anyway, I'm in favor of not posting names on the website, which is.
I think we have consensus. I think we are all have the same opinion that it serves no legitimate purpose in my mind to have the names on there. Of course, people are entitled to get those names through the Public Records Act. I mean, I remember initially there was talk about publishing them in the newspaper, which I thought was really bizarre. I think there is a point of what we want to do is discourage having to overburden our staff, and so I think we have to concentrate on making this system that we're developing the best system it could be, and making sure that the description of the records that have been requested previously is broad enough and concrete enough so that another person coming along said, oh, I'll look at that, and maybe that meets, encourage them first to look at that before they make, not to discourage public records requests, but to encourage them to use our system as much as possible so that we can cut down on that, because it is a cost to the city. It is legitimate, and sometimes you have some interesting information that is uncovered that is helpful for all of us as citizens, but you have to balance that with costs. Every dollar that we spend on things like this is a dollar that we could be spending on the library, our police department, other areas, recreation and those kinds of things. And so that's our job, to try to balance those priorities. And so I think if we have a really robust system without the names, and I doubt that anyone's going to be going over there asking for the names, but it could happen, and we have to accept that. So I'm in favor of putting that out there without the names.
Just out of curiosity, how many Public Records Act requests did we have in the last fiscal year? You remember?
Upwards of the 330,
330.
somewhere in that neighborhood.
Almost one a day. I mean, that's an incredible rate.
So I just want to make one quick comment that we do have to balance costs, and I agree, but I will say that democracy is always a good investment, and that's what we're doing here in this country. So having access to the information that belongs to all of us is important, and if we can streamline that system and make it more efficient for our staff and have it easier for our community to access, but that the information belongs to the community. So it's important that there's access and that we're proactive about doing the best we can to provide it. So thank you.
I think there is consensus that we publish the request, we do not publish the name. We'll see how it goes.
Thank you.
All right.
The only other comment I have on this is I think we have to do some education about what a public record is, too. I think there's a difference between asking for a record that exists and actually creating a record. And I know that Tom can talk a little bit about that. There's one thing, if a document exists, and it's asked for and it's not privileged, we have to turn it over. But I'm not sure that means that we have to start investigating and finding that information on our own and creating a document. And I think the public needs to understand that there's a pretty direct distinction there, so that and I'm sure that probably happens at the counter, at the point where the request is made. The document doesn't exist. That doesn't mean we have to go and try to create a document.
I just have one final comment. I think some of the volume is due in part, in some ways, to the way we do business here, and the fact that we now publish our agendas much further in advance, and we have, I think, a much friendlier process of engagement with residents. I would expect, I might be wrong, but I would expect that maybe the number of requests will decline. And particularly as you start to put the results up of what people are asking. I mean, a lot of this grew out of the water rates, frankly, and the manner in which they were adopted and passed without significant discussion or replies to the questions that were being asked by residents. And I really think we're on a good path of changing the way we do business, and I think that will have a big effect on this. I hope so.
All right. Well, I certainly hope it has some effect. I disagree with the council, with Ms. Koberstein's characterizations, but I certainly hope it has a good beneficial effect. Okay, thank you very much. With that, meeting is adjourned.